Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 329, The Process of Thought Generation, Part 3. The actors that feed into our thought processes. The podcast objectives are reveal the first critical fail point within our minds, analyze the actors that feed into our thought processes, and reveal the primary villain within your thought dimension. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. The primary drivers of thought manipulation. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to Day 57 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we concluded our analysis of the process in which our minds generate an informed thought. From now, we must analyze some of the key actors who feed into this process and yet are not directly within the process. As you learned in the prior podcast, your voice of reason is the only actor who is in the thought generation process. He is the only one with a seat at the table. Nevertheless, there are many actors that play a role in dictating the landscape of our minds. These actors influence our thought processes, which feed into our CPU, or they feed into the process of thought generation in some other way. Now, as it pertains to our CPU, we have already discussed how this power faculty is the primary driver of the thought dimension. Specifically, the fact that it is agnostic to the whims and drives of all the other faculties. To it, it serves a purpose, a powerful purpose, and it will always fulfill its purpose. Truly, in the end and after all, your CPU will always produce an informed thought. However, this is not the case for our thought processes. Like the CPU, our thought processes should also be considered as power faculties. And yet, there are key differences between our thought processes and our CPU. Here is one of them. While the CPU is an independent, unaffected agent, which serves as the primary engine of the thought dimension, our thought processes are the exact opposite. To it, they are dependent and they are partial to the actors that feed into it. And whereas the CPU is the primary driver of thought generation, the thought processes are the primary drivers of thought manipulation. Here lies the problem, an immense problem as it pertains to guarding your mind against doubt, and one of the many reasons we are conducting this analysis. For look, we have just found a critical fail point within our minds. The question of the hour then is, who are the actors that feed into our thought processes? For lo, if we can understand these players, we can come to understand how our thought processes are manipulated by doubt. and we shall in the upcoming section. The actors that feed your thought processes. Now, in beginning to answer this question, vis-a-vis the actors who feed into the thought processes, we should consider the most critical actor required to develop and maintain a healthy thought dimension. Enter your conscience. By definition, your conscience is an independent moral agent, which serves as a complex mental compass that guides your spiritual thought processes via the employment of ethical principles. Its purpose is to augment your spiritual and physical mind with the most accurate perception of physics, spirit, and time. As you can see by the diagram to the right, your conscious is not in the direct flow of the thought generation process. Look, it's not even a faculty of the mind. Rather, your conscience is found within your right brain, i.e., your spiritual mind. Notwithstanding, your conscience is a driving force within your thought dimension, which works from the periphery of the mind to ensure your spiritual thought process is aligned with the Father's will. We know this because the fulfillment of the will of our Creator is the truest desire of every man, woman, and child on the earth. And yet, many of us have lost our way. No doubt, the most celebrated feature of our conscience is the inner sense of right and wrong, which compels us to do what we know is right, or to follow the path we believe is right based upon the best intelligence made available to us. Here is why this is so crucial. Your conscience is the primary governor of your spiritual and physical thought processes. It ensures the output of these critical thought processes is accurate, i.e., aligned with a universal truth, which then feeds into the CPU, allowing it to generate an accurate body of truth and facts. Needless to say, this is how things are supposed to work. And if it did, the whole world would be saved. And yet, the whole world will not be saved, for there are other actors involved. And the worst of these may come as a surprise to some. Enter your personality. By definition, your personality is the sum of your physical and spiritual characteristics, which result in an organized pattern of behavior. At first glance, this rendering may not appear to be problematic. This is because many of us are more in love with ourselves than we should be, and we often become married to our perception of who we are. Here is why this is so problematic. Our personality is a derivative of many spiritual and physical diseases. Therefore, those of us who embrace our default personality are consciously retaining a host of spiritual and physical deficits, which become a breeding ground for lawlessness. To make matters worse, our personality feeds into our emotions. To wit, our emotions are designed to protect our personality. This is why people will often say, "You hurt my feelings." Notwithstanding, what they are really saying is, "You hurt how I feel about myself," which is why they will often become emotional. And in the worst cases, depending on how badly they have been hurt, this event could lead to depression if the hurt continues. Now, seeing as your personality has an internal force which protects it and which it feeds into, we should consider what feeds into your personality. In doing so, we will see how these matters are indeed complicated and why your personality will eventually become the primary villain within your thought dimension. Enter your perspective. By definition, your perspective is the state of your ideas and what you deem is true and factual. It is the faculty of the thought dimension that allows you to see all the relevant data in a meaningful relationship. Now, at first glance, one might consider there to be great power and potential in your perspective, and this is true. However, the inverse is also true. Here is why. Your perspective is driven by what you deem is factual and true, as opposed to what is factual and true. Here lies the problem. Vis-a-vis, it is much easier to cultivate a thought dimension that is filled with bad data, erroneous facts, and untruth than it is to achieve the inverse. For that reason, your perspective, although it has great power and potential to enhance your mind, often ends up doing the opposite. It further corrupts your mind due to the negative influence of the bad actors within your thought dimension, which it then feeds into your personality. Here lies another problem. Namely, this is the sum of all the primary actors in your left brain, i.e., your physical mind, as you can see by the image to the right. Consequently, there is very little hope for this division of your thought dimension. Alas, your physical mind is a problem, and you will see in a future podcast how this is where doubts feed. Even with the prominence and influence of your conscience, the overwhelming weight of your personality and a faulty perspective will perpetually cripple your physical mind. Fortunate for us, Elohim designed our spiritual mind in a different manner. Like our physical mind, our spiritual mind also has a perspective. However, it does not have a personality per se. We only have one personality. And although it is a derivative of our souls, it is primarily driven by physical stimuli, which is why it is in the left brain, i.e., the physical mind. Notwithstanding, your personality has a counterpart located in the right brain. And it is this counterpart that will provide us with hope in combating a faulty physical perspective and a toxic personality. Enter reality. By definition, reality is the accounting of an event or series of events that exist independently of the ideas concerning it, and from which all other things derive. Within this definition lies the key to a powerful model of checks and balances within our thought dimension, and I will elucidate in the form of an interest point. Our reality is a derivative of the universal reality governing all life and existence. Therefore, our reality has the power to constantly reset our thought dimension with a universal reality while establishing an effective baseline for our persistent acquisition of truth and facts. This is why you often hear people say you need a reality check. It's because your thought dimension has taken on a reality that is more reflective of your personality than the universal reality that governs and unites all. This is also why salvation occurs within our spiritual division. For as reality feeds into our spiritual thought processes and perspective, it has the power to transform the landscape of our thought dimension. Here again, this is the flow of the universe. Spirit flows into time, which flows into physics. And you can see this by observing the image to the right. Last but not least, the final components of our thought dimension are associated with our memory, as you can see by observing the bottom section of the diagram to the right. Now, there is a lot I could say about your memory, but for the sake of time, I would simply state that your memory, specifically your subconscious, is another problem area in your thought dimension. As a matter of fact, your subconscious is such an immense problem that we will be discussing it and the threat it poses even after we conclude our lessons on doubt. And thus, there is no pending need to dive deep into these matters at this time. For as the saying goes, at present, we have bigger fish to fry. Now, here is the final word. If we succeed in what we ought, then we will see the power of thought. This should be clear after considering this lesson. To wit, we have uncovered many fail points and bad actors within our thought dimension, all of which will, at some point, be manipulated by doubt. It is unavoidable. And yet, that doesn't have to be the final word on your spiritual career. Brothers and sisters, doubt is not destined to reign over you. Quite the contrary, you are destined to reign over him. And so, we must continue this analysis vis-a-vis, we must see clearly how doubt defeats us in our minds. And then we will turn the tables on him vis-a-vis, I will show you how you can wield the power of faith to defeat doubt and leave all his wares behind. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. Today, I want you to meditate on the actors we reviewed in this lesson. Specifically, I want you to meditate on your conscience, your personality, your perspective, and your reality. And if you should find that any of these is defective or in need of a spiritual upgrade, it is very likely because of some manner of doubt. And thus, I would have you pray against it, even now, knowing that the solution to your problem is on the way. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 329, The Process of Thought Generation, Part 3. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 330, The Battle Between Your Conscience and Your Personality. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.